Well, welcome back to Open Exchange. The West African region is the EU's most important trade partner in the African, Caribbean and Pacific region. West African countries account for 40% of all trade between the EU and the ACP countries. Joining us now for an overview of trade, the trade landscape in West Africa, Greg Gola, who is corporate banking expert for West Africa for Standard Bank, Minos Gerakaris, who is head of trade finance at Rand Merchant Bank, and joining us from Lagos is Oluwasegun Olatona, who's head of international operations at Diamond Bank. Let's start with you first, Oluwasegun. Give us a picture there, set us the context of the trade issues in West Africa, obstacles to intra-regional trade, and we're going to get onto the finance in a moment.
Yeah, the major obstacles to intra-African regional trade is a multifaceted. You want to take it from the challenges. And the challenges, one, transport. We don't have robust transport network. The cross-border challenges is there. Financial settlement payments is also another challenge. And understanding the risk of the African counterpart by the bank is another challenge that we have. Also, we have documentary issues that has to do with the border, which is quite enormous. And these are the major challenges that are affecting African trade. The level of usage of ICT is also very low, and I'm sure as the thing grows, as there are more knowledge about the use of ICT, this will be taken care of.
All right, let's come back to our Joburg studio for reaction.
Yeah, I must say I do agree with Shogun. The challenges there are largely logistical, in that it is very bureaucratic to move goods and services, or particularly goods cross-border in the region. I mean, it's complex all over Africa, but particularly in West Africa. And you've got different exchange control regimes. You have, particularly in the three key markets of Nigeria, Ghana, and Ivory Coast, not a common currency area like we have in the CMA in the Southern African SADC region. So different exchange control regimes, different duties, different reporting requirements do make it extremely onerous.
I suppose the point is these are the problems, perhaps not hidden problems. They've been known for a while. What are we doing about them? Are they being addressed? Are people in your organizations looking at this?
We most definitely are, and in the region you've certainly got intent to overcome a lot of these issues, in the sense that a lot of the countries are looking at economic integration and monetary integration, and we've seen very successful both economic integration and monetary integration with the West Africa Monetary Union, to a certain extent ECOWAS as well, but I have to admit it's not coming out in the numbers. You're still seeing a disproportionate of amount of trade with the EU and other Western states. I suppose not surprisingly, because the West African Monetary Union, for example, the currency is underwritten by the EU, by the French Treasury. So part of the problem is the access to finance and who is supporting the trade in the region.
Well, it's often been stated there's no shortage of money to invest, but of course the investors have questions, and some of those questions don't have answers. Oluwasegun, you've sketched out a couple of the issues, ICT, we've talked about finance issues. Are these issues around political will to get together to do things? Are they obscure regulatory issues, bureaucracy? Ultimately, is it possible to solve these things quickly if people decide to?
Yes, the political issues are there. You understand that the region has both the Anglophone and the Francophone, and the policy for the two segments quite differs, but there are concerted efforts to ensure that the region moves. And what it used to be 3 to 4 decades ago is not what we have now. And I strongly believe the West African Banking Association are also working on the financial aspect, and the central banks of all the countries have forums where they meet and discuss these issues. Yeah, political will is there. ECOWAS is doing the best they could do. And with the relative stability in the region, I think we expect speedy progress. One thing is there's a consciousness for the region to have a better international trade. It's opening up. I mean, trade between the West African region is growing, and that shows in no distant time there'll be more resolutions. Like there's a talk about creating the east-west road from Calabar down to Liberia, Ivory Coast. That's part of it. So some of these things that need to be put in place are not what can be done in a jiffy. But I'm sure that the body is conscious of that and the need for the region to grow financially and economically.
I would say, in addition to that, more than just political will, you need to see a growth in the manufacturing sector. The majority of that trade going in and out of it states there with the EU is primary products out. So it's crude out, it's cocoa out, it's gold out, going and being bought by the large global traders. In the case of now Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, also some steel and iron ore going out, and then all the beneficiated products coming back in, the refined white fuel and things like that coming back into the market. Intra-regional trade is going to not happen in those primary products. It's going to happen in manufactured goods.
I agree, actually. In fact, and it comes down to economic diversification. Between the different countries, particularly in West Africa, there's a high correlation of the products that they're able to sell. And realistically, there's only a certain amount of iron ore, gold, mangoes, cocoa that you can buy between each other. They need to diversify, they need to beneficiate, they need to be able to broaden the range of products that they can actually sell.
Isn't one of the issues that you've got old colonial trade routes, literally, back to the European colonial power. Now, if they are still paying and they are still supporting the people who produce it, why change?
It's to bring diversification to the economy and to grow it. When I was up in Lagos recently...
But what I mean is those individual producers may say, well, never mind the economy, we're okay.
They may well be, and I think that's where there needs to be a coordinated effort by, including government, to say, right, we need to develop the economy, we need jobs locally, we need to grow domestic GDP. And through that, we can extend our exports and in higher value goods, and then increase foreign currency into the economy.
But if you want diversification, you've got to reward it, haven't you? It's like if you want some more of something, tax it less.
Yes, yeah. Tax it less, make it easier, reduce the red tape. So there needs to be some sort of encouragement of the local banks to help out with the local and regional trade finance.
Well, it brings us to the finance issue. I mean, as I said earlier, people say the money's there, but so what's the problem with the finance?
The finance, from a regional point of view, from what we can see, is that the local and regional banks just don't have those correspondent banking relationships or the product lines that are established enough for country-to-country trade. It also makes it difficult that the level of sophistication of their credit criteria and their credit models are not quite at the level that you would get with some of the developed countries' banks. And the developed countries' banks will promote more north-south trade than south-south. It's
also why you two guys are here, because you have an interest in this, you have an interest in expanding it. Oluwasegun, that banking sector, it needs to be beefed up by the sounds of it to get more critical mass to do what needs to be done. How close are we to that happening?
Well, for that, I think there's an effort towards achieving that. One, in terms of correspondent banking, we've seen banks across different countries picking up the other banks as their correspondent in their country. We've also seen banks growing out of their country border to other countries along the West African coast, both the Anglophone and the Francophone. So if you look at it, really, there's effort on the part of the banks to ensure that the financial challenges are taken out. Also, I'm also aware that WABA is doing something to ensure that there's a financial system that crosses across all the region. And with the recent banking payment obligation that might be coming up from SWIFT side, there's an ICC working on that. When that is fully adopted there, I think it will also help take away much of the challenges. And as the bank grows out of their domestic environment to the international sites along the West African coast, you realize that the knowledge about credit will be improved. And the human capability being required is also being done. And with the level of technology in most banks now, I think that has been taken care of. To a reasonable extent, the banks are doing all that needs to be done to ensure they grow as they expand out of their respective region, as we have correspondent banking outside. And when you have a correspondent banking, you then begin to talk of having a similar payment platform, products that can allow flow of funds between the two countries, between the two banks without hitches, without breaking the regulations. And the central banks of these countries have also been given the required approval to ensure that there is smooth flow of funds, and which will also in a way facilitate trade transaction, because that's one of the challenges.
Okay, well, we'll have to stop there.
And by the time you also have a company, you'll be able to share ideas on credit, and that takes away the fear of unknowing the credit aspect.
Well, thank you to Greg Garlow, who is corporate banking expert for West Africa for Standard Bank, Minas Gerakaris, who is head of trade finance at Rand Merchant Bank, and Oluwasegun Olatona, head of international operations at Diamond Bank.